Apple is coming to San Diego. The company announces a multi-city expansion that will create hundreds of new jobs. Plus, the scene in Valley Center today as the operators of a local horse rescue center are evicted.
Still, we have 4.5 million gallons a day right now of raw sewage flowing through that river and into the ocean. So things don't look good for us for Christmas.
The mayor of Imperial Beach talks with KPBS about the latest cross-border sewage spill and its effect on water quality. KPBS Evening Edition starts right now. Good evening and thanks for joining us. I'm Ebony Monet. The Mexican government has made strides, but millions of gallons of sewage continues to pour into the U.S. As KPBS environment reporter Eric Anderson explains, this contamination reaches waters in Imperial Beach.
U.S. federal officials say a broken pipe in Tijuana is responsible for a spill that was dumping 6 to 7 million gallons of sewage every day into U.S. waters. Mexican officials have been working on the problem, and Imperial Beach Mayor Serge Dedina says the sewage flow is down to 4.5 million gallons a day. He says this situation is exactly why the U.S. government is facing 3 separate lawsuits.
Even with that pump on, we get 4.5 million gallons of sewage a day in that river. And that's why we're in court. And the reason is because we've been asking for infrastructure to capture all these incidental or frequent pump station breakdowns and sewer pipe collapses that basically cause our beach to be closed for weeks and weeks at a time.
A federal judge this week turned back a Justice Department attempt to have the lawsuits dismissed. The Department of Justice arguing that the municipalities and clean water groups can't sue because clean water rules don't apply to them. The cases are expected to go to trial in the spring. Eric Anderson, KPBS News.
The Carlsbad desalination plant has marked 3 years of turning ocean water into drinking water. Poseidon Water, the company that operates the facility, held an event this morning. Operators say the plant provides 10% of the region's water supply and has produced 40 billion gallons of water in 3 years. The Carlsbad plant is the largest of its kind in the U.S. Apple announces plans to bring more jobs to San Diego. The tech giant says the new operation will employ 1,000 people and be up and running in the next 3 years, with similar plans for Seattle and the LA area. Apple also plans to build a new $1 billion campus in Austin, Texas. Apple reportedly saved more than $200 billion due to this year's tax reform. Now, this news of an expansion comes about 11 months after the company's CEO vowed to use part of that savings on U.S. jobs. Tonight in Vista, the school board will vote on strategy to address racial disparities at magnet schools. KPBS education reporter Megan Burke says some parents believe it goes too far.
Parents have to compete in a lottery to get their kids into magnet schools, and those lotteries tend to favor more well-resourced parents who have the time and know-how to apply. And in Vista, once they get in, the students and their younger siblings get priority enrollment through high school. Superintendent Linda Kimball is asking the board to change that so students in disenfranchised groups have a better chance in the lottery.
I just want a fair chance for those students to get in. And right now, they have less than 50%. 50% of the pipeline's already full before they put their papers in.
KPBS found at one magnet school the number of white students ballooned 358% in 8 years and displaced neighborhood Latinos. Some parents say an open lottery won't solve the problem and could actually hurt the district.
My greatest concern, frankly, is that she's going to make the problem worse. That we're going to see growing inequality, that we're going to see whiter magnet schools because the people who are able to apply are going to be the ones who have a computer at home. They can go online, look for the deadline, fill it out online, print it out from their home printer, get in their car, drive it to the school, turn it into the receptionist and talk to that receptionist about what they're doing. That favors a certain demographic, and that demographic now has free reign to apply to as many slots as they want.
The reason I put her here is because of the pathway that she was going to have priority to get into the magnet middle school. So now they take that away. Now she's, who knows where she'll end up at. And Unfortunately, there are some better schools in the district than others, and if my child wasn't to get in the middle school that I want, I would probably go back to charter school.
Kimball says she hopes to improve outreach to families that haven't participated in the lotteries, regardless of the board's decision. Megan Burks, KPBS News.
The oldest Pearl Harbor survivor was laid to rest today at Miramar National Cemetery. KPBS reporter Priya Sridhar was there.
The San Diego community came out to honor the life of a hero. 106-year-old Navy veteran Ray Chavez was remembered as a loving father, husband, and patriot.
Uncle Ray was more than known to me, is more like a father.
Back in 1941, Chavez wrapped up an overnight shift on the minesweeper USS Condor just hours before the attack on Pearl Harbor. His crew made the first enemy contact that day, spotting the periscope of a Japanese submarine. Some of Chavez's fellow Pearl Harbor survivors paid their respects.
The whole idea is we were in the right place at the wrong time. Our purpose was to defend our country against foreign enemies and to protect the freedom that you have today.
Chavez continued to serve through World War II, retiring in 1945. He was buried with full military honors at Miramar National Cemetery, top military officials calling him an American hero. Priya Sridhar, KPBS News.
The latest government data shows more veterans commit suicide in San Diego County than anywhere else in California. KPBS military reporter Steve Walsh speaks with Jade Hyman about some of the causes.
San Diego has the highest number of suicides among veterans. What did you find out?
So the latest numbers from the California Department of Public Health are that in 2017, 111 veterans in San Diego County committed suicide. Number two is LA County, where 93 veterans killed themselves. And LA still has more veterans than San Diego, so that number is significant. Now, if you drill down a little further, the suicide rate in LA is 30 veterans committed suicide per 100,000 veterans. But the suicide rate in San Diego in 2017 was almost 45 veterans per 100,000 veterans committed suicide. Now, the VA says the national suicide rate for veterans is just under 30 veterans per 100,000, and that's already considered a crisis.
That's a lot. So what's driving these numbers?
So the VA is already alarmed by the rising number of suicides among younger veterans, and San Diego County has a lot of Iraq and Afghan veterans. I asked that question to a lot of experts, though, and the person I really want you to hear is Kathy Schott. She's a retired Air Force officer, and she counsels families who have had someone commit suicide. Her son, Tony, who was an Iraq veteran himself, committed suicide on Christmas Day, 2013.
That's him and his son.
Kathy Schott knew her son Tony was having trouble. He was living halfway across the country. He'd had a messy divorce. He was in the middle of a custody battle over his young son, and it wasn't going well.
I know I talked to Tony all the time, but I didn't hear the pain at that point.
She says he went to the VA 2 days before Christmas.
I told him I couldn't make it through the holidays. And I said, "What's going on?" He goes, "Mom, I'm just so sad." And I go, "Buddy, everything's going to be okay. I promise everything will be okay."
He finally returned her call on Christmas 2013, and he sounded optimistic.
When I replay that conversation, and I have many, many times, his very last words to me were, "Mom, don't ever forget how much I love you." I heard it, but I didn't hear it.
Schott emphasized how difficult it can be to tell when someone is about to kill themselves, even if you know that person well. At times, military service can make people even harder to read.
Nobody wants to go and admit, I have a problem, which we need to admit, I have a problem. I'm hoping that it's getting better, But, you know, I think there's still this stigma that if you say you have a problem, you're not fit for military. Yet we all have problems. We all deal with something.
She casts around for some other reasons. Like so many veterans, her son killed himself with his own firearm.
He was constantly teaching others how to use guns safely. And then he used a gun. So yeah, among veterans, I can see where firearms are a big thing, you know. Here in Coronado, we have the damn bridge. Sorry, but we have that bridge, you know, which we need to figure out a way to do something so it's not so accessible.
So Kathy mentions the Coronado Bridge, and lethal means is definitely part of the puzzle. According to the medical examiner's office here in San Diego County, 9 veterans killed themselves by jumping off that bridge between 2013 and 2017. But that's nothing compared to firearms. Among the 474 veterans who killed themselves over that 5-year period in San Diego County, 262 of them used a firearm, which is among the most lethal means.
Now, how hard is it to get good numbers on all this?
Well, Jade, it's actually much harder than you might think. I talked to the San Diego medical examiner, Dr. Stephen Campman, and he says that California's law is about to change just to get better numbers.
The bill requires that the status be recorded on the death certificate by whoever's completing the death certificate, which will mostly, that part will be the families and the funeral homes. But then the other part of the bill is that then the state will be able to give that information to the VA.
So the hope is that better data leads to better solutions.
Okay, and this is obviously a series you're following. I know tomorrow you're going to be talking about elderly veterans who commit suicide. Steve Walsh, our military reporter there. Thank you so much, Steve.
Thank you, Jade.
I'm Judy Woodruff. Tonight on the NewsHour, how a partial ceasefire in Yemen could help end a brutal war as the U.S. Senate takes a symbolic vote condemning Saudi Arabia. Coming up at 7 after Evening Edition on KPBS.
Today, sheriff's deputies evicted a troubled horse rescue facility from its ranch in Valley Center. KPBS media partner iNewsSource has been investigating high-caliber horse rescue since February. It has faced animal cruelty and fraud allegations. Photos and videos show damage to the property. High Caliber and its founder are being sued for damage and loss of value to the ranch. The city of Encinitas has been ordered to change the way it deals with housing. KPBS North County reporter Allison St. John has an update on a legal fight that's been going on for years.
Encinitas is the only city in the county that doesn't have a state-approved housing plan for where to build more much-needed new housing. They've been fighting the state for years. In fact, I did a feature 5 years ago when they passed Measure A. That was a measure that said that voters would have to approve any change in the density, bigger height limits, more density. And since that passed, the voters have not approved any new changes to density. Now, with Measure U failing in November, a Superior Court judge has said, that's it, you've reached an impasse. The judge has now required the city of Encinitas, the city council, to pass a state-approved housing plan in the next 4 months. Parisi Ijadi Magzudi is a pro bono attorney for Tenants United, one of the plaintiffs.
As a result of this ruling, the city must take steps to rezone adequate sites to accommodate the affordable housing needs of low-income families, which is something the city has not done for decades. So we are closer to getting the city to follow the law and accommodate the needs of its most vulnerable residents.
Encinitas Mayor Catherine Blakespeare says the ruling puts the power back in the hands of the city council. The judge didn't completely overrule Proposition A. He said that voters in Encinitas can continue to vote on changes in the general plan in the new housing cycle that begins in 2021. Allison St. John, KPBS News.
A plan for more housing near a future trolley stop took a step forward today. The San Diego Planning Commission voted to support the Balboa Avenue station plan. It would allow for another 3,500 homes near the extension of the Blue Line trolley. Some of those who offered public comment say the street design for the area is too car-oriented.
The region is investing billions in the Midcoast Trolley Station extension, and it would be a shame if this project failed to meet or provide the necessary multimodal connections to encourage people to take transit, bike, and walk.
The City Council will consider the housing plan early next year for a final vote. Governor-elect Gavin Newsom is a few weeks away from taking office. Capitol Public Radio's Ben Adler has details of a new poll on some of the issues Newsom campaigned on.
The Public Policy Institute of California asked respondents how high of a priority each of these issues should be next year. 57% of likely voters said universal health care should be either a very high or high priority. Universal health care does not necessarily mean single payer, just that all Californians are covered. That's followed by 47% for tuition-free community college and just 41% for universal preschool. The poll also asked about California's high-speed rail project, which Newsom supports but hasn't prioritized. Only 19% said that should be a very high or high priority. More broadly, 41% of likely voters approve of Newsom's plans for California, 32% disapprove. And turned out Governor Jerry Brown will leave office early next month with a 52% approval rating. At the state capitol, I'm Ben Adler.
This weekend, you can find holiday-themed concerts ranging from rock to classical. And the San Diego History Museum showcases a longtime local artist. Here with more is KPBS arts editor Nina Guerin.
Rex the Halls is a holiday concert put on by radio station 91X, and it stands out for showcasing a wide range of alternative music, from old favorites to rising stars. Headlining the show is Death Cab for Cutie, a 1990s band with heartfelt lyrics that was the soundtrack to all the popular TV shows and movies. You heard Death Cab for Cutie on The OC, Gossip Girl, and even the Twilight soundtrack. Also performing is 16-year-old singer Billie Eilish. Her music is a blend of indie electronica with a dark edge, like Lana Del Rey or Lorde. But Eilish has a sound all her own, and she recently performed a sold-out show in San Diego, so make sure to catch her before she's even more famous. The other bands performing at Rex the Halls are Third Eye Blind, Lord Huron, The Interrupters, and Barnes Courtney. How much do you love the movie Love Actually? It's going to be screened at the San Diego Symphony, complete with live accompaniment.
Oh, hi.
Who is it?
It's carol singers.
Relive the Christmas romantic comedy that follows 10 different love stories that are all interconnected. It's set to a score by Craig Armstrong, and it will be performed as the movie is screened above the orchestra. Finally, the San Diego History Center opens the first ever museum exhibit by local artist Bob Matheny.
I was trying to explain what the state of art was. 2 or 3 other police cars pulled over wondering what was going on. So we had 2 or 3 policemen there with the state of art vehicle.
It's called Almost Anonymous, and it showcases 60 years of work, from his early beginnings in sculpture and graphic design to his more recent 3-letter paintings. The longtime San Diego artist was Southwestern College's first full-time art instructor, and he founded and programmed the school's art gallery. Though he's well known by other artists, this is the first time there's been a retrospective of his work. The opening party happens Saturday, and the 89-year-old artist will be on hand. The exhibition will be up through March 24th. For KPBS Arts, I'm Nina Guerin.
Now, talking about a whole bunch of wet weather here for Southern California. You can see on our satellite and radar, none in the area. Moisture will continue to come out towards the northwest. Some of that moisture will try to inch its way into Northern California. But as for Southern California, we actually have high pressure towards our north and east, and that's keeping things pretty tranquil, actually allowing for an offshore flow here tonight. And throughout today, you might have noticed the winds have been breezy. Tonight, we're cooling down to 40 in Borrego Springs, 37 in Mount Laguna, and 40 in Oceanside. We're in the lower 50s for San Diego with mainly clear conditions. So tranquility, winds even in towards our Friday, dry air into the Four Corners, in towards Southern California, and that moisture back towards our north and west there. Not going to be needing the umbrellas here for your Friday. We're looking at clouds and sun in towards Borrego Springs, the high of 68, 53 in Mount Laguna, and 69 in San Diego, as well as into Oceanside. We head into this weekend. Dry air will continue to push on through for us. We will, however, notice an onshore flow. instead of an offshore flow, and that means temperatures going to be cooling down a bit and even a chance for some wet weather. So for this weekend, we are on the dry side. Plenty of sunshine near that coast, topping off at 70 on Saturday, 69 on Sunday. And then as we head into early week, that onshore flow can bring the chance for a passing shower and a bit more cloud cover with a high of 65. We'll also be noticing temperatures a little bit cooler into your Monday for the inland areas with a high of 67, but through the weekend, feeling amazing. We'll be in the 50s here Saturday for the mountain area. Monday, we're dropping down into the 40s and also looking at the potential for some shower activity through the afternoon. The deserts, well, we're mostly in the 70s for your extended forecast and looking at the dry side of things for your Saturday and Sunday. Reporting for KPBS News, I'm your meteorologist, Dajia Swat. Back to you.
A breakthrough in space tourism happened this morning over California's Mojave Desert. Virgin Galactic flew its Spaceship 2 aircraft 51 miles into the air. The U.S. Air Force considers 50 miles to be the boundary of space. The project is led by billionaire Richard Branson. Rockets carry the aircraft to high altitude before slowly it glides back to Earth. Hundreds of people have already signed up to pay $250,000 each for future flights. Underwater research in Antarctica is being controlled in San Diego. Eric Anderson has an update on how scientists are studying an important part of the ocean's food chain.
One 8-foot-long glider is already in the water. Another will join it this coming weekend. Southwest Fisheries Science Center biologists are using the underwater gliders for the first time to track huge swarms of crustaceans that play an important role in that region's food web. Research biologist Jen Walsh is piloting the glider from San Diego, and she's already been surprised.
When the glider moves into a pretty dense krill patch, it doesn't dive very well because it detects the krill patch as the bottom of the ocean. So it kind of sits on the surface until it can move out of the krill patch or the krill patch moves away, and then it can resume diving.
Some of the data collected can be transmitted back to San Diego in real time. Other data will be retrieved when the gliders are pulled out of the water in March. Eric Anderson, KPBS News.
New bridges are being designed in several western states to help protect animals and drivers. AP reporter Noreen Nasser has the story.
Interstate 90 in Washington state cuts through mountains and old-growth forests. The route carrying thousands of people and shipments also creates a barrier for the wildlife in the area.
So in the immediate term, wildlife can get hit on the road and die. Over time, roads can really impact wildlife populations at large.
But soon, animals in the Cascade Mountains will have a safer option for crossing the road by going above it.
We are currently on top of the wildlife overcrossing just east of Snoqualmie Pass.
Washington's Department of Transportation is finishing the state's largest wildlife bridge.
This is an area that we had pinpointed as being a natural migration pattern for wildlife to access the Lake Ketchilas area and go back up to the mountains.
Similar bridges, along with fencing and undercrossings in other states and Canada, have resulted in drastic drops in collisions between animals and drivers. In Wyoming and Colorado, bridges, underpasses, and fencing have cut down collisions by more than 85% in locations where all the crossings have been built.
Providing habitat connections will eliminate some of those wildlife from accessing I-90 and keep drivers safe.
A 2008 U.S. Department of Transportation study found that collisions between animals and drivers have been steadily rising, totaling 5% of all crashes nationwide and costing about $8 billion to the economy. For animals, roads can isolate populations, causing inbreeding or block access to new feeding grounds, among other damages.
Everything from an elk or a grizzly bear down to a small salamander. They need to move to find food, to find mates, to find new places to live as their populations expand, or just as conditions change, like a fire breaks out that changes the habitat.
Western states have identified dozens of locations where wildlife crossings are needed, but challenges remain.
The number one obstacle is funding.
Washington's new bridge took 3 years to build. It's part of a 15-mile stretch of renovations that includes several undercrossings.
Before the construction, we would be looking at just a wall of soil across here.
More crossings and more bridges are planned to be built during the second half of the project. Supporters hope the I-90 crossings helps propel more projects like it.
And you cross over streams and you cross over wetlands and through forests. and you're traveling at a speed where you don't have time to think about what you're passing through.
But now the new bridge will remind drivers they're not the only ones using this road. Nori Nasser, Associated Press.
Now here's a look at what we're working on for tomorrow in the KPBS newsroom. President Donald Trump says he might rely on the military to build a border wall. Morning Edition takes a look at how that would be accomplished. And on Midday Edition, KPBS cinema junkie Beth Accomando reviews the German action film Snowflake. You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thanks for joining us. Have a great night.